Well, hello. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sarah Wilhelm Garbers. I am the Executive Director of the Westminster Town Hall Forum, and we are so grateful that you are here today, whether you are here in person or if you are joining us online. It's our 45th anniversary spring season, and we are grateful to be with you in the work of affirming that ethics still matter. Now, I'm going to ask that if you are here in person, both for the sake of your warmth and the spaciousness for others who will still be arriving, that you would, squeeze in and make friends with your neighbors as much as possible. And if you're at home, you can also do that or take more space, whatever you want. But we are so pleased to be able to start off this forum with a local musician named Rachel Kurtz. You can read about Rachel in your program, but I just want to tell you that I first heard Rachel Kurtz at Ice House in South Minneapolis. And I remember sitting there in my seat, and one of those moments where you're like, this person is magic. Rachel has her own form of magic, and one of the things that I think is so beautiful as we move into this space to talk about ethics and democracy, this is not a mere intellectual exercise, right? Right? The work of democracy is embodied work. So get into your body, enjoy the music, and then let us consider together ethics and government anew. Let's welcome Rachel Kurtz.
Trouble, oh trouble, what these eyes have seen. Roots in the forest growing wild in me. I can feel a shiver of the ones that came before. Silence is a killer and the devil's keeping score. Blood runs deep, blood runs deep, way down in the darkness, oh, way down in me. Blood runs deep, blood runs deep. As I walk through the valley, Lord, don't you trouble me. Yes, trouble, oh trouble, there's a storm rolling in. Black rain's burning like acid on my skin. I can feel a shiver of the ones who came before. Trouble, oh trouble, doesn't scare me anymore. Blood runs deep, blood runs deep, way down in the darkness, oh, way down in me. Blood runs deep, blood runs deep, way down in the valley, Lord, don't you trouble me. Woo. I walk through the valley, Lord, don't you trouble me. Hold on, hold on, my dear ones. Here comes the dawn. Sing with me. Hold on. Hold on. Hold on. Hold on, my dear ones. Here comes the dawn. Sing it for our neighbors. Hold on. Hold on, my dear ones. Here comes the dawn. One more time. Hold on. Hold on, my dear ones. Here comes the dawn. Good morning, good morning. It is an absolute pleasure and honor to sing with you today. It was very fun to tell my friends and my family, hey, I've got this morning, I'm opening for the former 7th FBI director. And they're like, what is happening? And I'm like, I'm going to be in this gorgeous cathedral downtown, no big deal. Anyway, I grew up in a little town an hour west of here. And I have had just a delightful time singing in so many unique spaces. And what I recognize over and over again is that music actually can heal us and that we need it. It can help us move energy through our bodies. It can help us move emotion through our bodies. And when COVID happened and all of the gigs dried up and I was scrapping together a life, and I just missed singing with everybody so badly. And so I'm gonna sing some songs for you this morning, and I'm gonna sing some songs with you. But it is truly an honor to be here. God bless you. This song is by a group called the Common Hymnal, and I'm changing a lyric in it, but I just want you to know that you're not alone, and that we are in this together, and we need each other more than ever. So thank you for the ways that you show up, and that we will continue to show up. I have never been prouder to be from Minneapolis. There's a time for everything under the sun, from the start of life until life is done. A time for distance, a time for here, a time for joy and a time for tears. There's a time for rest and a time for work, a time to listen, a time to learn, a time to fail and a time to try, a time to seek and a time to find. Oh, love is here with you. Whoa. Season comes, oh, you are not alone. There's a time for winter, a time for spring, a time for silence, a time to sing. There's a time for healing, a time for pain, a time for justice, a time for grace. There's a time to be still, a time to play, a time for steady, a time for change, a time for losing, a time to win, a time for getting back up again. Oh, God is here with you. Oh, and we're in it too. Oh, when your season comes, whoa, you are not alone. There's a time for everything under the sun, and a place of rest when your time is done. A time for reverence, a time for awe, a time to know and be known by God, a time to know and be known by God. Oh, love is here with you. Oh, and you're in it too. Oh, when your season comes, oh, you are not alone. Oh, God is here with you. Oh, and we're in it too. Oh, when your season comes, whoa, you are not alone. Whoa, you are not alone. This next song I wrote ages ago for a gathering of young people, and I could not believe how well it fits. I will not make you stand unless you need to stand and boogie. I mean, feel free. I know this crowd in particular is known for its dancing, but I know we're singing Rise Up. You don't have to, but I do want you to sing. And so this is how it goes. I'll sing it, and then you'll just sing along with me. And then there's going to come a part where I'm going to sing, whoa, whoa, oh, and you need to sing, whoa, whoa, oh. But here's the thing. This is your time to be rowdy. We got to get ourselves together after this. I want you to sing like you're alone in the car. I would like you to sing like no one can hear you. I mean, when I say we're talking raucous, that's what I'm going for. So be ready. This is your time to shine. And again, if you need to, move your body a little bit, feel free. But this is how it goes. Rise up, we will walk together, rise up. We will stand together, rise up. Hand in hand together, rise up. Oh, rise up. Before I continue, oh my gosh. This is my friend Joe Peterson on the keys. Joe Peterson and his family started a farm, and they have an incredible CSA, Peterson Farms. If you want to talk about it, come talk to me, and I'll get you in touch. He is literally minutes away from having his third baby, so just if you want to send some positive energy to his wife, that would be awesome, because he's not actually physically having the baby, she is. What kind of work is that? Like, literally. Anyway. Rise up, sing with me, we will walk together, rise up, we will stand together, rise up, hand in hand together, rise up, oh, rise up, sing with me, rise up, we will walk together, will stand together, rise hand in hand together, rise up, oh, rise up. We're gonna sing it higher, rise up. We will walk together, rise up. We will stand, rise up, hand in hand together, rise up, oh, rise up. Sing oh, sing oh, 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 oh. The Spirit comes with the baptism. The Spirit breathes as we sing the hymns. The Spirit calls and sends us out. The Spirit joins us as we shout, rise up. We will walk together, rise up. We will stand together, rise up, hand in hand. Rise up, oh, oh, rise up, bring it up one more. Rise up, we will walk together, rise up. We will stand together, rise up. Hand in hand together, rise up, oh, oh, rise up. Sing oh, 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 oh. Good job. You guys are so great. I'm having so much fun, like I figured I would. Years ago, when Jamar Clark was killed in our city, I had 3 young kids. My kids are biracial, and so even more, I was aware of what was happening and needed to show them that I will show up, and we need to fight for justice, and we need to just show up and be present. And but I had 3 kids, and I was like, well, I can't go occupy the precinct in my community. I'm on the north side, but what can I do? And then I remembered all the pictures of the tables of food for the civil rights movement and all the old Lutheran white ladies that made food for the protesters. I thought, well, I can make food, my gosh. And so I can, and I quilt, and I do all, because I grew up in a small town. And so I made chili from scratch from my own canned tomatoes. And I brought this big pot of chili, and I brought it with such pride. And then I realized I was waiting there for my thank you. And I was like, oh, well, that's a little gross and uncomfortable to tell the truth about my own self, because here are all these people that are showing up every day, laying their lives on the line, being present in their bodies, and I need them to thank me for just bringing some soup. Like, come on, Kurtz. And we're all on this journey of learning better and then doing better. Like, we get to learn new things, and then we get to behave differently. And we get to share in the ways that we can show up, and we get to admit when we're wrong. And so from then on, I would show up, see what the needs were on my way to Costco, with, or whatever, and then just bring what I needed. And it was just this beautiful learning season for me. And then one day, some white supremacists came in and injured 5 people. And so the day that I showed up the next morning, when I hadn't known what had happened that night, the energy had totally shifted. And the crowd was much smaller. And all I wanted to do was sing, but I didn't want to, press my agenda on the crew that was there. And then a woman that I had been in a choir with, a black woman that I'd been in a choir with, said, "Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you're here. Do you want to sing a song?" And I'm like, more than anything. And so I sang. And as I was singing, this little crowd came together, and we just sang and cried together. And it was just a profound moment. And so I just want you to keep your eyes open for the ways that you are being asked to show up and tell the truth and fight for justice and be present in our city. And I know that you're sharing with your neighbors, and I know that there's all sorts of belief systems here, but we do know that we want our children to be okay. And we want other people's children to be okay. And we want to do good in the world. And so this is the song I sang that morning. Hold on, just a little while longer. Hold on, just a little while longer. Hold on, just a little while longer. Everything will be all right. Sing on, just a little while longer. Sing on, just a little while longer. Sing on, just a little while longer. Everything will be all right. Pray on, just a little while longer. Pray on, just a little while longer. Pray on, just a little while longer. Everything will be all right. Fight on, just a little while longer. Fight on, just a little while longer. Fight on, just a little while longer. Everything will be all right. Everything will be all right. Everything will be all right. We got one more song for you. We're just going to end it on a little bit of fun. This song is called Hey, 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 and you get a part to sing in this one. Hello, guys. You're so fancy. Is that okay? I have one more. Is that all right? Great. Oh, my gosh, guys. James Comey. anyway, I get to sing downtown at the Basilica at this ministry that they have called Side by Side, and it serves unhoused folks. And this is one of our faves to sing, and it is an absolute privilege. And so, again, I want to thank you. Hire me. I'll sing anywhere. That's all I got to say about that. Yeah. If your eyes were a hand, then I would blush. You looked me over one time, hey. You said, hey, what's your name, girl? I wouldn't say. I said, hey, hey, hey. Hey, hey, hey. Hey, hey, hey. Hey, hey, hey. Her hair was black, her body strong. She held my gaze just a little too long. And when we danced, she held me tight. Well, I knew that I could love her all night. I said, hey, hey, hey. Hey, hey, hey. Hey, hey, hey. Hey, hey, hey. She held my gaze, I blushed so deep. I knew tonight that I wouldn't sleep. She kissed me once, she kissed me twice. I know I shouldn't, but it sure feels nice. I said, hey, hey, hey. Hey, hey, hey. Hey, hey, hey. Hey, hey, hey. I said, hey, hey, hey. Hey, hey, hey. Hey, hey, hey. Hey, hey, hey. If her eyes were a hand, then I would blush. You looked me over one time, hey. You said, hey, what's your name, girl? I wouldn't say. I said, hey, hey, hey. Hey, hey, hey. I said, hey, hey, hey. Hey, hey, hey. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Rachel Kurtz. Wow. Friends, welcome to Westminster and welcome to the Westminster Town Hall Forum in beautiful downtown Minneapolis. I'm Megan Gage-Finn. I serve Westminster and this community as the Senior Associate Pastor, and it is wonderful to have you all with us here for this conversation today. It is an honor to be joining you in this conversation, and welcome to those also who are joining us online. For 45 years, the Forum has welcomed voices of conscience to speak on matters of the day from an ethical perspective in our public life together. And now, more than ever, we know that ethics still matter. So let's settle in together for what I know will prove to be a rich and dynamic conversation today. And afterward, I hope that you will enjoy moving about the building, enjoy the library, the art, and of course, the breads and spreads reception to follow. Know that you are welcome always here in these spaces. It is my pleasure now to invite up the forum's executive director, Sarah Wilhelm Garbers.
Well, again, a hearty welcome, and thank you for being here. One of the beautiful things about the legacy of this forum is that we welcome voices of conscience, and that includes all of us, people who wrestle with matters of ethics and public life. And since it began in 1980, this has been just such a space to enliven us in our ongoing work together. It was indeed in the fall of 1980 that our first forum was hosted here in this space, welcoming former special prosecutor from the Watergate scandal, Archibald Cox. Right. Yes, indeed. A moment that fundamentally ruptured any naivete and trust in public and governmental institutions. And in many ways, we find ourselves in a similar space anew when trust in institutions, in democracy, and our public leaders is rightly broken. But even so, we know the work of eschewing both naivete and cynicism as we together then seek to act ethically in this time. And so today, in inviting James Comey to speak anew about ethics in government, we did so inviting him to share some of his own wrestling and reflections, having sat in seats of leadership, wrestling with matters of truth and democracy. And I want you to know that you, as a moral agent with whatever questions or wonders or critiques or resonance that you bring that. And may it indeed then be a time for us together to continue the good work of defense of human rights and democracy, and uplifting all that is necessary for defending neighborism and promoting a civil society and the common good. As we move into this space, and the bells welcome us, thank you, bells, I would also like to take a moment to thank some of our sponsors. In particular, I want to thank the Minneapolis Foundation, whose generous support in celebration of this 45th anniversary season has made this forum able to be a space that is free and open to the public. Thank you. We're also so grateful to be able to have media partners in this work, including MinnPost and Sahan Journal and Minnesota Public Radio. And we are grateful and pleased that this and all of the spring forums will be rebroadcast later this spring on Minnesota Public Radio. I'd also like to take a moment to thank our volunteers who make this space happen and possible. And in the insert within your program, if you received one, listed out those who've been intentional in putting their money in a place to support this ongoing good work. So to all of you who come and show up with your time, your money, everything, thank you so much. And I'd also like to invite you that if you do not yet donate, we would more than gladly welcome that. A few things about the flow of what will happen. I will be done in just a moment, I promise. And then we will be able to hear both from our guest moderator, who I will introduce momentarily, along with James Comey. Then, if you're new to the forum, you may not know, but a distinctive and wonderful hallmark is the way we get to hear from one another in an engaged conversation. So the second half of our forum will feature your questions and your wonders. If you're with us online, please put those into the comments. If you're here in person, you received a card in your program. At any point, fill that out. Once we get to the midway point of the program, ushers will come forward to gather those, the questions will be sorted, and an engaging conversation will then be forthwith. If you have not yet done so, please silence your cell phones. And with that, I am pleased to introduce our guest moderator for today. Our guest moderator is Minnesota's own Justice Margaret Chudich, who served as an Associate Justice on the Minnesota Supreme Court for over 8 years. She was appointed by Governor Mark Dayton in 2016 and was the first open member of the LGBTQ+ community to serve on the court. Justice Chudich previously served on the Minnesota Court of Appeals and is currently a senior judge. Before taking the bench, Justice Chudich served as Assistant Dean to the Hubert H. Humphrey School of Public Affairs and served over 14 years in several roles at the Minnesota Attorney General's office, including as Deputy General of Law Enforcement Selection, and also prosecuted criminal cases as Assistant U.S. Attorney for the District of Minnesota and practiced law privately at 2 Minneapolis law firms, so indeed a person who has served our community and state for years, beginning her clerking for the Honorable Diana Murphy, then a federal district court judge. She graduated from the University of Minnesota, studied Croatian during her time there as well, and received her law degree cum laude from the University of Michigan. Among other leisure activities, Justice Chudich enjoys playing keyboard for the Reasonable Doubts, who we hope to welcome as our musical guests. In the future, they were unable to join us this spring, but it is an all-judicial band. Yeah. So, thank you, and join me again in welcoming Justice Chudich.
Well, thank you for that warm welcome, and good afternoon. I'm just delighted and honored to be here with you today to talk about this vital discussion of ethics in government. And we're very fortunate today to hear insights from James Comey, a dedicated public servant who spent much of his career seeking to protect the American people and our Constitution. Mr. Comey led the Federal Bureau of Investigation from 2013 to 2017. He was appointed to the post by President Barack Obama. His tenure was tested by new forces within and outside America's borders as he confronted foreign intelligence operations, mass shootings, the surge of ISIS, an opioid epidemic, and controversy over police shootings. Inside the FBI, while navigating government shutdowns, he tried to change how the FBI approached leadership, diversity, and cyber threats. Needless to say, his job was not easy. He served in that role until President Donald Trump abruptly ended his tenure 5 months after taking office in his first administration. Before his service at the FBI, Mr. Comey worked as a federal prosecutor in New York and Virginia and served as U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York. He also served as the second in command at the Justice Department, a Deputy Attorney General in the administration of President George W. Bush. He's worked in private sector law firms and has taught at the graduate and undergraduate level at many universities throughout his career. His 2018 and 2020 books on ethics and leadership were both New York Times bestsellers, and I recommend them. Very, very accessible, very good reading. He's a native of the New York metropolitan area and holds a law degree from the University of Chicago Law School. So, Mr. Comey, welcome to Minnesota, and I give you the podium.
Thank you so much. It is a deep honor to be with you, not just because of what this forum represents, but because of what this community and this state represents to my beloved country. I believe you have, through your sacrifice, through your pain, through your loss, for which I am so sorry, I believe you have changed a nation. I believe you have given a nation hope, focus, and purpose. None of that makes what you've been through, the unimaginable loss, worth it, but it makes me as an American grateful that you've shown my country and this world what it means to be an American patriot. So thank you for the opportunity to be with you today. My topic is wrestling with truth and democracy under the heading of Ethics Matter, which I'm so glad there are people left in this country who believe that to their core. I want to touch on my topic very briefly before we get to our conversation, which is what I'm really excited about. You can ask me anything, and I promise you a direct and honest answer, even if it ruins my day. But I want to set up our conversation by touching on this question of truth and democracy in three different ways. First, I want to talk about what truth is and why it is the touchstone of our democracy. Second, I want to give you a bit of a report card from my perspective on how we're doing as a democracy in protecting truth, and especially the role of the independent judiciary in doing that. And then last, I want to drop down a little bit into detail and explain to you why it is so hard and so important for a leader in the government to think carefully about how to find truth. And then I'm going to shut up. So let me start with the first, in an obvious place that I shouldn't have to start with, but I need to in today's America. Truth exists. There are things that are knowable. There are things that are falsifiable. If I heard someone say, "It is raining in this sanctuary," that wouldn't be their perspective, their take, their truth. It would be a lie, because it is not raining in this sanctuary. Now, of course, there are things that we call my truth, your truth, which are our perspectives on facts, and we're entitled to have different perspectives on those facts, and they're not susceptible of being true or false in the same way that the weather in the sanctuary is. But they can also be analyzed by asking, is that view honestly held? Is what you're telling me what you really believe, even if I believe something different? The truth has been the touchstone of America since our founding. Whether we realize it or not, we have always measured our leaders by their tether to the truth. To take two leaders that I worked very closely with, George W. Bush and Barack Obama. Both of them made false statements as president. Right? Obviously, famously, George W. Bush told us there were weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. Less famously, and frankly, less importantly, Barack Obama said, if you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor. And those statements turned out to be false, different degrees of significance, but both false statements. And then something else happened. Both of those presidents devoted the rest of their terms, and maybe the rest of their lives in the case of George W. Bush, explaining their tether to the touchstone. They acknowledged its centrality in American life by constantly trying to explain, I meant, I thought, I understood, or I'm sorry. And they did that because we held them to that tether. We measured them against the touchstone of truth. There is a danger today in America because we have been exposed to a tsunami of falsehoods in the 2 terms that have been Donald Trump's presidency, beginning with what I call the first lie. Were there more people at Donald Trump's first inauguration? Were there more people at that first inauguration than at Barack Obama's first inauguration? That's not my take, your take, my perspective, your perspective. That is a knowable, objective fact. It is a lie to say there were more people at Donald Trump's inauguration. And that was just the first lie of the first Trump term. And it's funny because it's so bad, but we have faced wave after wave, and I'm speaking to an audience in Minnesota, a place that has been the target of so much lying, especially in recent weeks and months. There is a danger in all that lying, that the touchstone of truth will be overwhelmed by it, will be washed away like a sandcastle at the beach, so that we become so numb that we stop measuring our leaders by their tether to the touchstone. We become convinced that the truth isn't a knowable thing, it's not a real thing, it's not at the center of American life. And then what are we as a country? Because the thing about America is, we wouldn't exist without that touchstone. Because America's a place where we aren't held together by the normal glue that creates a nation, right? Despite what the so-called Christian nationalists may tell you, we don't come from a common ancestry, a common heritage, a common religion, a common philosophy. That's the normal glue that binds collections of humans around the world into nations? No. We are bound together by a set of values, at the center of which is truth. We hold truths. That's how we came to exist. Now, of course, we've never lived up to those values, right? We held truths while we held human beings in bondage, but the truth has been the center of this collection of humans. If we find ourselves in a place where we've lost the touchstone, where we've gotten tired and numb, and we've given up, we no longer have the thing that makes us Americans. I have worried since the election of Donald Trump, the first term, that would happen to America. The good news, in my view, is that millions of people have seen that same danger and responded by insisting that the truth is a real thing. And I'll give you a list of the people I think have been heroes. I think the media has acquitted itself extremely well by fighting in the face of a storm of attacks aimed at delegitimizing the media to try to speak the truth. In part, they've been aided by the fact that the definition of media has become this: the American people, with their phones, with their voices, with their whistles, have joined the chorus of people saying, no, I will find the truth, I will share the truth, I will speak the truth. And I believe that in doing that, they have safeguarded the touchstone, reminded the rest of America that we can't lose sight of the fact that we hold truths, which is what makes us Americans. Second, I think the most steadfast guardians, besides ordinary Americans of that truth, has been the body of people responsible for protecting the rule of law in America, our judiciary, especially the group of people who are appointed to lifetime positions as federal judges, and the juries they steward and the grand juries they steward, have stood up in a way that a lot of people haven't noticed because they do the work in robes without television cameras inside courtrooms in protected federal courthouses. But I believe the rule of law has passed its stress test this year, just as it passed the first test in the fall of 2020, when a tsunami of lies was aimed at the rule of law, and the judiciary stood tall at all levels, county, state, and federal. They're tested again by the extraordinary level of illegality coming at them from the Trump administration. And I believe they have stood up and passed the test by working as designed. Our founders, because we believed that the holding of truth is at the center of America, created systems to find truth through the collision of viewpoints, right? That's the nature of our judicial system. It's an adversarial system. That's the nature of our federal government. It's a three-branch, self-interested collision that is designed to produce better results. The tsunami of lies was extraordinary. Donald Trump took office, issued all kinds of illegal executive actions, Law firms buckled and bent the knee. Big companies buckled and bent the knee. Universities that should know better buckled and bent the knee. But it was actually a bit like a bungee jump. Very impressive at first. Right? They all the knee bending, all the running and hiding, all the yes sir, no sir, leads to a plunge deep down into the canyon. Very, very depressing. And I've never bungee jumped, but I've seen it on TV. Something follows that plunge down into the canyon, as followed in America. It snaps back up as people with an ethical spine stand the hell up. And among the people who have stood the straightest have been America's federal judges, who are appointed to find facts and apply those facts under a framework of law. I'm not here to suggest to you that all is okay. I'm not here to suggest to you that it's gone exactly the way I would want it to go, but the system has functioned as designed. And my great fear, when the early bungee jump started, was that Donald Trump and his henchmen would defy court orders, that they would decline to follow orders from the United States Supreme Court or courts of appeal or other federal judges. And that hasn't happened, to my great surprise and to my little bit of confusion. It hasn't happened. And Donald Trump standing at a podium in the White House railing against the Supreme Court over its decision on tariffs is both awful and a tacit admission that he is bound by the decisions of that branch of government, which is a very good thing. And so maybe there are principled people in the Trump administration who care about the constitutional design. Look, I'm kidding. Just messing around. I don't mean to suggest that. I don't know why they made the decision to follow court orders. It might be he judged that would just be a bridge too far for the American people. I don't know. But it's part of the reason I say the rule of law has passed its stress test. When you look at the record of the Trump administration, it's awful. Just take civil cases. They've lost 2/3 of the civil lawsuits brought against the federal government. That is unheard of in my entire lifetime. Take the Supreme Court. And here's where the numbers can get a little misleading for folks. The Trump administration only appeals a small slice of what they lose in the trial courts, in the district courts. And then they take an even smaller slice of those and bring them to the Supreme Court. So think dozens of cases out of hundreds of cases. They're only appealing the cases that they think they can win, so not many. And even in the Supreme Court, the numbers where they appear to win have been misleading for people who are non-experts, because most of the cases so far have involved what's called injunctive relief, where a trial judge stopped something, and as it made its way up, the few that got to the Supreme Court may have said, no, granting emergency relief is not appropriate in this circumstance. Not a decision on the merits of the case. And sometimes it takes months and months after that win for the Trump administration to get a decision from the court. But the decisions that have come from the court, again, tell me the rule of law is standing up. Now, I shouldn't say it's not the rule of me. It's not the rule of you. You don't get to have the decisions that you always want. I don't get to have the decisions I always want. The question is the system working as designed? It is, as you saw in the tariff decision that the president railed against. Part of the reason for that is our founders were smart enough to create a branch of our government that the president can't frighten and he can't fire. And I don't know whether you know any federal judges or whether any are here, but they are a group of people with a fierce courage and a fierce sense of culture. And the culture is rooted in being independent people of integrity. Now, some of them, and I have friends who are federal judges, can be maybe a little bit remote and sometimes a little bit arrogant. None that I know or that you know personally. But that remoteness, that sense of self, that culture is the genius of our founding, and it is saving us today. And the third branch of our federal government that has been missing is about to awaken. After this fall, I believe that 2/3 of the design of our founders will be acting as the designers wished, and that will make us safer. And I don't mean to suggest that we will be safe, given who will be our president for another almost 3 years, but we will be safer, because the clashing of interests to get at truth will be a huge part of American life at long last. Third, I want to finish my brief remarks by telling you why it is so difficult for even the well-intentioned who are leading inside our federal government to find the truth, to hear the truth. Every leader of any organization sits uphill from the people they lead. And I know you may be sitting there thinking, well, I have a nephew who works in Silicon Valley and he tells me everybody's even, and they sit around drawing on whiteboards and eating trail mix or something. But if anyone in that room of people in hoodies and flip-flops eating trail mix owns more of the company than somebody else, the ground slopes up towards the person who owns more of the company. Every leader sits uphill, and I choose topography to try to capture fear. All leaders are feared by the people downhill from them, to varying degrees, but every leader has the ability to hurt the people below them, to discipline them, to fire them, to embarrass them. When I became FBI director, I was surprised at just how steep the hill was. It was almost a cliff up to the director, born of 50 years of the first director. J. Edgar Hoover created a culture where the FBI director was viewed as a bit of a god, a remote emperor. When I walked into a room, people stood. They dressed like they were going to a religious service. When they spoke to me, they had a catch in their throat. They were nervous. When they walked into my gigantic conference room and saw me sitting at the other end, they were terrified to come visit the wizard. That wasn't about me. That was about the culture that I inherited as a leader. That is true throughout the federal government, because the institutions of the federal government are old and big and occupied by people who come in many circumstances as a bit of a foreigner to the office. They are appointed for a temporary position, and so the ground slopes very steeply to them. The challenge as the leader at the top of that hill is that that slope makes it very, very hard for me to hear the truth, especially about me, for them to tell me when I'm wrong, when I'm confused, when I'm angry, when I'm about to make a mistake. I'm at the top of the hill. Who's going to take that chance? When a person comes in to brief me as the FBI director about cryptocurrency, which I asked for multiple briefings about because I didn't understand it and I began to think it wasn't me, I would ask for a briefing and they would bring in the person from the intelligence directorate who devoted years to understanding this. She would sit at the table and tell me about her life's work. When she was finished, I could crush her with a sound. I didn't even need to say a word, just make a dismissive sound. I do that, she will never recover. She knows that. I have to know that if I'm going to have a chance of finding the truth. The challenge of being at the top of the hill is that on that slope is a double bind called the imposter complex. Right? That's the idea that if you really knew me the way I know me, you would think less of me. All of us had that to one degree or another. If you don't, you're an unbelievable jerk. I don't know why you're at the forum. But all of us nurture a fear of exposure. Think about the effect that has on the hill. I'm at the top of the hill. I have an imposter complex. I'm not really the wizard. They shouldn't be afraid of me. That woman downhill from me, the cryptocurrency expert, she's terrified of me exposing her. The only person who can solve that problem and have a chance at getting at the truth is the leader, because I have the power. And so I have to find a way to break the double bind. I have to have enough confidence to risk myself by lowering and flattening that hill. And how do I do that? I used to think that there were two states of the world that passed for listening. And I've learned through leading and from being married to an amazing person that there's actually three states of the world. The first state of the world is obviously not listening. That's silence while you talk. The second state of the world that I thought was listening was silence, so you talk, and I actually follow what you're saying. I'm paying attention. That's wrong. The third state of the world that is actual listening, and that must be the way a leader at the top of the hill acts, is it's silence, plus I'm listening to your words, following you, plus a weird form of communication. I have to communicate to you with my body, my face, weird sounds, that you're safe. I got you. It's okay. It's okay. I got you. I want what you have. I want what you have. Think about watching two good friends talk about something that they care about, and imagine yourself being a stenographer trying to make a transcript of it. You can't, because they're talking over each other, they're making weird sounds, a lot of stuff like that, that you can't make a stenographer record of. What's happening? That's listening. Even with sounds, that's listening. I want to illustrate this by talking to you about the best listener I've ever seen and the worst. Turns out they were two presidents that I worked under. The best listener I've ever met in a leadership role was a man I didn't know before he asked me to come and talk to him about being FBI director, was Barack Obama. You go into the Oval Office as the FBI director to brief Barack Obama on something. He goes over and he sits by the fireplace. It's kind of like your folks' house at Thanksgiving. There's no signs on the chairs, but they're kind of assigned. The president's chair, as you face the fireplace, is to the right. And so he would take off his jacket, put it on the back of the chair, and sit. And then there's a couch to his left. He would lean over and he'd pat the couch cushion. And he'd say, Jim, come on. How's your family? How are they doing with all this craziness? And the kids now, how old are the kids now? And he'd start asking questions. And I'm nervous. I can't even remember the name of my family members because I'm trying to remember what I'm supposed to tell the president. And then after that, he turns and he faces me. He opens up his shoulders and he says, so what do I need to know about this? And then he's quiet for 5 to 10 minutes. I know that's hard to imagine today, but 5 to 10 minutes, except he's not silent. He's making noises. He's going, like that. What's he doing to me? He's saying, you're safe, give it to me, give it to me, give it to me. And he never interrupted me. Because when the President of the United States interrupts you, something weird happens. You had in your mind what you were going to say, and then he interrupts, and you're like, should I be saying something different? Maybe I shouldn't tell him this thing. He seems upset by this thing. And you start calculating. And Barack Obama knew the danger in that calculating, so he was quiet, but not silent. And then when I was done speaking, he would ask me questions drawn from minute 1, minute 6, minute 9. He wasn't dreaming about golf. He was waiting. He was tracking because he understood the hill and the danger in the hill. Okay, so Barack Obama leaves, new president comes in, different. Donald Trump never sits in the chair by the fireplace unless he has a foreign visitor and has no choice. And then he sits with his rear end on the edge of the chair and leans forward with a long tie to try to cover up, I think, his feelings about his own body. I'm not making that up. When Donald Trump is getting briefed, he sits behind the Resolute desk. For similar reasons, I think, sits behind the Resolute desk. And so think about this, the hill. There's now a block of wood on the hill between you and the president. And this is going to sound like I'm being facetious, this is just factual. He almost never stops talking. And so to tell him something, I had to interrupt him. So again, the hill, block of wood, the president is speaking over the block of wood at you. To communicate something to him, you have to cut him off to tell him what he needs to know. Which of those two approaches to the hill is likely to produce the truth? Only one. So if you lead an institution in America at any point under any president, and you hope to make wise decisions, sound decisions, you have to find a way to flatten the hill. So I roll into the FBI thinking about this. I'm gonna do this all better. Take off my jacket. One day I took off my tie, and the whole organization went into a tailspin. So I put it back on. I turn and face the people who are coming in. I say, tell me, what do I need to know? But before I do that, I ask them questions. I make weird noises. I spend tremendous time trying to prepare for a day when I will need that hill flattened, when I will need people around me who will tell me the truth, especially about me. And I needed those days. Those days came, and I needed those people around me. And I'm sure we're going to talk about decisions I had to make. But I worked very hard to get to a place where I had people who would tell me what was true and not be afraid of me. So, truth is at the center of America. My report card for the rule of law is, it's standing up, thanks to the activities of our judges, and that people who care about finding the truth in government need to find a way to flatten the hill so they can make sound decisions. I was in the airport on the way here, and I got a chance to have an impromptu conversation with a young guy who's a newly elected representative in a state legislature. And he asked me, so I've read you saying you're optimistic about America. Why? And he said it like, why? The reason is in part because I worried that the awfulness in leadership that we see every day at the top of our federal government, the tsunami of lies, was going to scare away, especially the young people, would scare them into other walks of life, out of public service, out of wanting to be leaders, out of wanting to give to communities and to our country. And to my surprise and to my great joy, the opposite has happened. There are millions and millions of people in this country, especially young people, who understand that truth is our touchstone, who understand that there is deeply meaningful work available to a leader who cares about finding the truth. And they are not running for the hills. They are coming forward. They're waiting for the opportunity to serve. And one of the reasons that they're doing that is they've seen this. There's a risk I'm going to get emotional trying to say this to you, but I meant what I said at the beginning. You have inspired a nation. You have awakened a giant. I think of America as this big bell curve. And in the middle are the normally disengaged, busy people raising families, getting graduate degrees, people running around. And they only wake up so often. They woke up the beginning of this forum after Watergate, and we changed the way our government was structured. You have awakened that giant, whether you feel it or not. And I believe that giant is going to save us. I believe we are going to see a U-turn in this authoritarian attempt that we haven't seen in a very long time in America. And so thank you for inspiring those young people. Thank you for nurturing those young people. Thank you for being an example to our beloved country. I look forward to our conversation.
Well, thank you so much. And this is a time I'll invite our volunteer ushers to come forward. If you have questions or wonders that you have already written and you're here in person, please raise your hand. Ushers will be gathering those wonders. Trust that they will come. This won't be the last thing, so if it takes a minute, they're coming to get those cards. And if you're with us online, again, please put any wonders or questions into the comments. This is such a rich time in the conversation for us to hear one from another, and our sorters will be then gathering those and forwarding them on to Justice Chudich, who will be moderating. And with that, let me pass the baton to you, Justice Chudich, as you bring us into this space.
Okay, well, thank you very much. That was just an amazing speech. I didn't know you were so funny. But I mean, the points you made were so right on. You know, I was going to ask a question about the rule of law because I'm concerned about the attacks on our judges. And I think, you know, if you made the point that they're actually doing very well so far. And we'll probably come back to that later, but those points were so interesting about how leaders can help people feel comfortable enough to tell them what they need to know. So thank you very much. And now I'm going to ask you a tough question after complimenting you. I'd like to take us back to a very difficult ethical time in your career that you faced just before an election that took place in 2016. And frankly, back then I was quite surprised when the director of the FBI came out and had a press conference announcing the end of an investigation of Hillary Clinton's emails, and without charges, and then giving some commentary about her behavior. And then I was really quite stunned when, you know, days, I think it was, or a week or so before the election, you sent a letter to Congress notifying it that the investigation had been reopened. And I read your books, and that helped me so much to understand why you thought those actions were necessary. But I think for the people in here who haven't had the pleasure of reading your books, and I really do think they're quite good, and your career, for those of you who don't know, he spent years prosecuting mafiosa in New York. I mean, you undertook many tough assignments. But for those people who haven't read the book, can you talk about those decisions? And, you know, hindsight is always 20/20. But can you tell us if you would have done anything differently?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. It's a totally reasonable and important question. 2016 for me was a complete nightmare. And the nightmare began in 2015 when the deputy director of the FBI walked in to tell me that the organization had just opened an investigation into whether Secretary Clinton, who was an announced candidate at that point for president, had mishandled classified information by communicating in an unclassified email system about classified stuff. And I tried to remain calm, nodded, and as he's walking to the door, he turns and looks back at me and he says, "You know you're totally screwed, right?" And I laughed and I said, "Yep, nobody gets out alive." And he left. And what he meant was, we're investigating one of the two candidates for president of the United States in a deeply polarized America in an election year. Obviously, one half of the electorate is going to be disappointed and angry. Now, I didn't imagine at that point that I could piss off both halves. But what happened to us was we then set about doing an investigation and did it in a really professional way. And I stayed closer to this than a normal investigation, despite what you may read on TV or even see on the news these days, I guess. The FBI director doesn't run investigations, but I wanted to stay close to it to make sure that I knew enough to be able to protect the people doing the work from any kind of influence. And then they came to me near the end of the investigation. We said not a word about it and said, we don't think there's enough there to bring a case, and they explained why. And then in the late spring of 2016, we had to announce the conclusion of the investigation and explain why, which is something the Department of Justice has long done. And for reasons that I don't want to get into all the details of, that would normally happen with me and the Attorney General making the announcement together. And I made a decision I never imagined ever making, that even though she was an old friend of mine, I couldn't stand next to the Attorney General and make the announcement. I had to stand separately because of a variety of things that had happened that would cause, forget the political wingnuts in Fox News, but that would cause reasonable people to question whether the investigation was done professionally and independently. And so I thought the way to address that is I will announce the conclusion myself, provide the same detail I would in a joint announcement, but I'll do it myself. And we can talk about it. I have some regrets about that. But then we were done. We're done. And I spent the entire summer being hammered by the Republicans and testifying repeatedly under oath that we're done, go away. This was done in a professional way. There's nothing there. We found this many thousand emails. There's not enough for a case. Get lost, defend, defend, defend. Because I believe that the trust and confidence of the American people is the lifeblood of the Justice Department, and that is only supported by transparency, and so I'll testify whenever I'm needed. And then I was done. And I got an email at 5 in the morning on October 27th from the Deputy Director saying the team needs to meet with you today. I don't get a lot of emails from the Deputy Director at 5 a.m., and so I met with the team, and they rocked my world. I walked in, and they said, I'll cut through this quickly because I hope you don't know some of this. There was a guy named Anthony Weiner, and the FBI had found hundreds of thousands of Secretary Clinton's emails on a laptop of his. And when they gave me that number, luckily I was sitting, I went like this because we had only ever found thousands of emails. And they said, not only have we found hundreds of thousands, we think we found the missing emails from the beginning of her tenure. And if there was evidence of criminal wrongdoing, that's where it would be. And I said, how fast can you review these? They said it'll take many weeks because we need people who know the subject, we need lots of reasons why. And they said, sir, we think the result of this investigation could change, and we can't finish this work before the election. So what do? I could see immediately two doors. I always believed and still believe that whenever possible, the Department of Justice should not take any action that might have an impact on an election. Believe in it. But the two doors, both of which led to hell, were both actions that might have an impact on the election. One door said speak, the other door said conceal. And the reason the other door said conceal is I had already told the American people under oath repeatedly, this is done, there's no there, go away. And now I know that's not true. And so what do? Which door do I choose? And reasonable people can say I would have chosen a different door. I get it, and I respect that. My answer was, I can't lie to the American people as the director of the FBI. And so I'll have to tell the committees, all these committees I testified in front of, that something has changed, but I'll say as little as possible. I won't offer any explanation, and that will minimize any damage that might occur. And that's where we are. And the team finished the work for technical reasons. They were able to build a system that allowed them to go through it more quickly. Came to me on the Sunday before the election, said, we finished, there's new stuff there, but nothing that changes our assessment. And I said, okay, I've got to tell Congress then. So on that Sunday, I sent a letter to Congress saying, now we're finished, nothing has changed. Then I went and had an enormous margarita. And I respect people who see that differently. But the honest answer is, I don't think I would have done it differently going back in time. I wish like heck I hadn't been involved. I hate that I was involved, that we were involved. And I knew that I would never be able to explain this decision adequately to people because I couldn't talk about it before the election without doing more damage. And so that's the pain of that. Now, the results of the last two elections, I'm no expert, have given me some sense that maybe I wasn't as important as people sometimes say I was. because late-breaking voters broke for Donald Trump then, broke for Donald Trump in 2020, broke for Donald Trump in 2024, when I was home in my pajamas for both those elections. But I don't know. I wish we hadn't made the decision, but I'm proud of the way the decision was made. A group of 12 on flattened ground argued about that, cried about that, and made that decision, and it was made for the right reasons. We were not trying to help elect Donald Trump president of the United States, for God's sakes. We were trying to make the decision most consistent with the values of the institution we were supposed to lead, and the one that was most consistent with our promise to be honest people of integrity. So that's too long an answer, I'm sorry. But
Well, it's an answer that I think people really wanted to hear, and thank you for explaining it. I mean, you're right, you were in a no-win situation. A question from the audience asks about the FBI now. I mean, you must be heartsick in seeing what's happening. And the questioner asks, is there a framework for a functioning FBI still in place? Or would the question asks, would Congress need to reestablish? I had the same sort of question about, the line FBI agents and attorneys that you speak about in your book, how they're, they have political beliefs, but they're really keen to be nonpartisan in their work. And thinking about what they face, we've recently seen, about 17 prosecutors from the District of Minnesota resign because of ethical issues. And we have senior leaders who are unabashedly partisan. So thinking about the framework for a functioning FBI and what a person in that organization does when faced with unethical leadership. Do you think it's best for them to stay there so that there is a framework, or resign and protest? I suppose it depends, but your thoughts on that?
yeah, the Department of Justice, of which the FBI is a part, is deeply wounded right now. And the career people are in tremendous pain because they are the way you described. They are not political people. The great cultural sin in the FBI was to be labeled a political person, to care about anything other than finding the facts. It's the bedrock of that institution. And so they're in tremendous pain. They're trying to survive. They're trying to stay because they believe in the mission. Their mission, which I helped write, was to protect the American people and uphold the Constitution of the United States. They believe in that. And so they're trying to survive, to make it another 3 years. And I encourage them constantly to try to do that. And just to know that you might be in a position where you have to quit or get unlawfully fired, right? Not to make this personal, but I'm about to make it personal. My eldest child was one of the best prosecutors this country has ever seen, devoted her life to bringing to justice people who had abused and sexually trafficked women. She indicted Jeffrey Epstein. She indicted Ghislaine Maxwell. She prosecuted Sean Combs. And they fired her because her last name is the same as mine. And so what I tell people is try to stay, do work in the right way. And this is going to sound facetious, but it's true. Have a go bag under your desk, right? Have your stuff packed up. Because you may need to leave, you may get fired, but do your best to serve the mission because it's a mission worth sacrificing for. That's where we are today. And so those institutions are going to be in bad shape come 3 years from now. Here's the good news. Everybody who cares about the mission wants to go back. They want to go back. They're not interested in money. They want to go back and serve the American people and uphold the Constitution. And so that's what I meant when I said we're going to experience a U-turn. I'm mixing all kinds of metaphors. I'm sure I'm making you dizzy, but the bungee jump, the snapback is going to be in part those young people. All the people who quit here, they are great men and women. They're going back. And so we're going to be okay in the long run. In the short run, there's going to be a lot of pain. Innocent people may even get indicted. Imagine that. But it's a tragedy, but there's no other way than to try to survive, do your best, and be prepared that you may be sacrificed.
Mm-hmm. Not easy to do, but necessary. We have a couple questions here about, one says district court judges have been great, but what about the Supreme Court decision on presidential immunity? There have been a number of cards on that. Are you hopeful that that will somehow change?
I am. I think it's unlikely that it will change in any short-term sense. Years from now, well, hopefully we'll never have a president who tees up the issue in quite the same way for the court to decide, but I could imagine it being redrawn 50 years from now, but not in the short term. But here's where I want to make a point that may, I hope doesn't rub you too much the wrong way, that I would have written that decision differently. I do believe there has to be a core of immunity for our president to make sure our presidents don't look over their shoulders. But I would have defined the gray area around that differently when you're outside of the core authorities of the president to give a little bit more looking over the shoulder to presidents. But I believe that decision represents the rule of law working. I don't agree with it, but I think it was written by people who honestly have different views than I do about how the Constitution should be read. But that's what you get with the rule of law. And so I think you can criticize that decision, but don't let it lead you into the whole system sucks and it's illegitimate, because there are going to be lots of decisions rendered by the Supreme Court in your lifetime and in mine that I would have written differently. And that's okay for me to be mad about that, but I hope I will separate out my evaluation of the system as a whole from that. And yeah, I'll stop there.
Okay. We have a number of questions about Minnesota and the Operation Metro Surge. Questions that say that the Trump administration repeatedly ignored court orders. You know, how can we hold them accountable for these actions? Do you think that ICE is going to be held accountable for these actions? And another person pointed out some of the areas where the government has been so recalcitrant. In your case, they're now appealing, even though you know the U.S. attorney there, temporary, was you know, the trial court dismissed the case. So, what do you think about that? The accountability for. It's really unprecedented to see, especially here in Minnesota, all of the orders that were ignored or weren't followed through on. What are your thoughts on that?
I think, look, there's no perfect accountability, but I think by and large there is accountability that is being imposed and will be imposed on litigants, both agency people and lawyers who have disregarded court orders. I think in the overwhelming main, it's not the product of the defiance that I feared most. That, I mean, again, my nightmare was that the Trump administration would say, enforce your own court orders, right? The U.S. Marshals work for us, so let the judges enforce their own court orders. And they haven't done that, but through arrogance and incompetence. They are this amazing mix of malevolence and incompetence. I saw that in my own case, in lots of these cases, but the judges have not let it go. I mean, it must be exhausting to be a federal judge anywhere, but especially in Minnesota right now. But they are keeping the list and want to know what happened with this one, what happened with this one, what happened with this one, who's responsible, who's held accountable. And the lever is the lawyers who fear financial sanction, who fear ruin. They all can't end up, after Trump's gone, working in Mar-a-Lago, so they're all worried about what's going to happen next. And so there is accountability in fits and starts in some places, but in the overwhelming main being applied. And that's part of why I give the rule of law a passing grade.
Several of the people in the audience are concerned about the upcoming elections. And one says, following the seizure of election records from Fulton County, Georgia, and the false claims by Donald Trump and his followers that the 2020 election was stolen, what's your assessment of the risk to our 2026 elections? And there are several people who are concerned about that.
We should worry. We should do everything possible to ensure that our election systems are robust, that they're independent, that they're administered by professionals. And I think that's work that's going on. I mean, Donald Trump, in a way, has awakened us to those dangers. And the American, the American election system is a wonderful hairball because it's all local and state. And so whatever the truth socials he posts, whatever executive orders don't matter. What matters is, do we have the systems in place to protect our machines, to protect our registration systems, to protect the process? So it's really important to worry about that. In the overwhelming main, I think we're going to be okay. I think it's going to be, if I were going to predict, I would say it's a little bit like the gerrymandering that Donald Trump has forced the Republicans to engage in. They're going to be very sorry that they did that. The voters, I think, are going to be most discouraged by the nonsense coming out of the president are people who might vote for Republicans. Vote for mail is a huge part of Republican strategy, and he's dumping all over it every day. So I'm like, more of that, please. And so I think I am optimistic that we're going to be okay because of the nature of our system and that the fool has awakened us to make sure that we protect the system.
Are there things that the people in this room can do to ensure that elections are fair?
Sure, volunteer to work as an election monitor. Connect with the League of Women Voters. Participate. Again, it's all your neighbor Fred who's looking at your license saying, oh, yeah, I see you moved. And having conversations at a very, very local level. It's not Donald Trump's pen on an executive order. It's how are we doing in the gym under the basketball hoop on election day? And you can be part of that by volunteering to do it.
Okay, I think we're coming to the close. And here's a couple, well, here's a throwaway one. Have you considered running for president?
I will never do that. I very much hope she does.
Okay, that's a great answer in this crowd. You've talked about what gives you hope at the end of your prepared remarks, but one person wondered if there's a poem, song, prayer, or quote that centers or grounds you in your work and your journey. I think that's a nice way to end.
Probably, I don't even know who said this, that I should, the advice that's lived with me, trust only the one who doubts. That is, in following people, in choosing people to be near, I look for people who aren't certain of their own rectitude, of their own view of reality, of their own perspective on things, because in that doubt is wisdom. I have met a lot of people like that around this country who are worried about this country, worried about where we're going, not certain that they have the answers, but are willing to go out and labor in good faith to protect this thing that we believe so much. And so I cling to that and look for those kind of people to lead me and to work with me.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. You all, thank you. Thank you so much for being here today and being with us, for being Minnesotans who are leading ethically and for showing up with courage. We invite you, as you're gathering your coats, there's breads and spreads just down the hallway, some ways that you can engage. And please make sure to mark your calendar. March 19th, we will be joined by Nina Totenberg and some of our resistance singers from Minnesota. Good Trouble, and then our 45th anniversary. Make sure to sign up online at westminsterforum.org and continue to do the good work, because ethics indeed still matter. Thank you.